Floyd. Hey, how's it going? How's it hanging? Um, I'm doing well. I'm still on my sober journey. Um, I'm off of caffeine, off of sugar, off of wheat, off of dairy, um, off of weed, off of alcohol. I want to still get off of nicotine, and I just stopped using the internet today. Um, the reason I want to quit the internet, there's a bunch of reasons, but I guess the biggest one is that it just consumes so much of my time, and my awareness is directed towards things that don't directly affect me. I know that people say that it's important to have a worldview that, you know, helps you to navigate society, and that sort of justifies the consumption of media. But in my experience, whenever I quit the internet, I don't go back to it because I suddenly lose touch with society. I'm actually more involved and aware of the problems because they're so inescapable. Like, then I'm driving my car all the time and feeling frustrated that the transport system is so inefficient, or that grocery stores are giant storage units and everyone has to carry pieces of little paper around so that they can get groceries and cook next to each other instead of like having a communal feeding system that also would limit diseases that are caused from nutrition borne um, deficiencies. So, I'm faced with these things every day. I'm faced with the poverty, with the beggar, and there's nothing you know, to take my mind off the fact that I'm living in a society that's collapsing in on itself. So, even though people will tell me that it's important to have this thing that gives me a worldview that's more rich, I feel that it actually takes away from the reality of my situation and feeds me ideas of the problems that are so abstract and in a way make me feel powerless and ignite fear, because that's the incentive behind these like technological algorithms is that, you know, it manipulates people and feeds off their attention um, by inciting fear and taking away control. So that's a reason. Another reason is that I just feel my attention gets shattered from consuming media. Um, Even now, just being off of it for like a few hours, I feel restless. I know that I'm reaching for my phone constantly to look for not insights into what's happening in the world, but a sort of dopamine hit. And I think that it's no different to any other drug that I've quit, in that it creates a problem and then manages it. Like, it creates so much dysregulation within my mind, and then when I'm not using it, all of a sudden that dysregulation is so consuming that I want to continue consuming media just to numb that effect of too much too much processing on the back end. Just being off of it a few hours, I can already feel my mind centering into my own life, thinking about the people in my own life, my problems that I'm facing here. My energy is going into my own network, where it worries me, it concerns me how everyone's time and attention is being fragmented into things that they don't affect. Like, how many relationships are being starved because instead of thinking about, what you should get your friend for their birthday, you're looking up politics of a country that have nothing to do with you. And that's another strange part of the internet. I'm a South African, and so much of the internet has to do with US politics, and that's it's kind of like some kind of uh it's a show. It's all a show. It's like a perception based judgment competition of power, and we're all just supposed to judge these people that are affecting systems, again, that they don't even interact with. Like, they're supposed to solve problems in the farming sector when they've never been a farmer. They're supposed to make rules on the medical system when they aren't even doctors. Another thing is, like, they're all just making all these laws. This is just politics in general, but they're making all these laws, and you have to study so many years just to know the laws, like the rules that you're supposed to follow else you go to jail. Just the amount of time it takes to understand what you can and cannot do, it's kind of crazy to me that we're expected to follow rules that no one really knows the full extent of. Like, if you played a board game, you wouldn't just go in and not know what you're supposed to do and not do in order to avoid, losing. That doesn't make any sense. So there's all of these problems with the political system that I feel are overshadowed by the circus that happens on the surface level. All of these pawns moving around, and we're just waiting for a savior of a person to come and have all the answers that will fix all the problems. And that's another reason why, like, the internet feels so obligatory, is that is obligatory the right word? Let me have a look. Okay, I I don't want to have a look. I'm too lazy. But what I'm trying to say is, like, it feels necessary because of the way that we make decisions in society. Everyone is supposed to be an expert on everything. And so, everyone feels that they have to absorb all of this information in order to make the correct choice to give the right person power. It's not even like we're collecting this information and using it to make decisions. We're just collecting the information so that we can judge whether the people who are supposed to fix the system are saying the right things in order to gain our trust. When, yeah, that's just so overwhelming as an individual. Like, I found in my life, at least, that experience is the best teacher. And there's something about knowledge, about understanding, that is constantly tested from reality, that makes it reliable. If I'm a farmer, I can study for 20 years on farming, but that doesn't really mean anything until I've been a farmer and grown things and seen, picked up on little things that I don't probably won't even cognitively understand. It's just like your brain will recognize those patterns and test what it knows and get better that way. But we don't reality test our beliefs. We just absorb information and then use that fragile belief system to give people decision making power, again, to affect systems that they don't really understand because they haven't experienced them. So people say it's important to study and learn all this stuff, and ignorance is seen as some sort of evil in our time because it threatens the stability of our society when someone says something that is maybe untrue because of the fragility that's created from um, this surface level knowledge uh, decision making process. So I don't I don't want to participate in using my time to understand everything very briefly so that perhaps I can be seen as moral because I have the right opinions. I want my understanding to be useful in my own life and be tested from my unique perspective. And that's another thing that the internet really steals from us, at least from me, is, you know, like just stepping away from my phone because I have been on off the internet for the past few months. Trying to get off of it is difficult, but every time I do, I just realize what makes me me is that I take up a certain position in reality that is unique in this time and space. And my experience, my unique experience, is what formulates my personality. And by consuming things that are mass produced, by looking at a screen where the information is accessible to everyone, I'm sort of diluting my own uniqueness. And I see that because I can sort of predict what people are gonna say based off of a little bit of their belief system because I know that they've harvested it from a certain portion of the internet, and that sort of network has become who they are and is um, replicable. it's it's kind of scary because as human beings, I feel that our strength comes from our 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 network. The fact that we all do take up different positions, and by combining our perspective, we come to realize a more full understanding of reality, you know? But what happens when all of our perspectives are the same because we're all consuming the same media? I know not exactly the same, like everyone's algorithm is gonna be a little bit different, but my point is that it's nowhere near as different as actual life. Like your actual life, no one else has that perspective. It's going to make the network unintelligent. Another thing that bothers me about the internet, particularly YouTube, is that the knowledge is validated from popularity and not from truth. Um, you know, it's hard for me even to recognize when I'm watching a video. I look at the likes and I look at the views and then I judge its validity. Like that's no way to build a knowledge base, you know? What's accepted widely isn't necessarily true or even can be dangerous. And I feel like it's just a, a madness making machine because we're all just validating each other based on how well we can gain attention, which doesn't necessarily, in my mind, result in good outcomes. You know, like a screaming baby will get a lot of attention, but that's not because it's like, it's important, but, you know, it's a fear response that is getting that energy. What's going to happen when all of our decisions are made from fear, impulsivity, and surface level judgment. Is that really going to result in a society where we are thoughtful and think of, long-term consequence to our actions? I don't think so. And I'm bothered by how that controls my own internal mechanisms. Another thing about the internet that bothers me is that, let me think of another one. There's a lot of them, particularly the shorts. I can feel, I don't really watch shorts, but there would be a time where I do get caught by the hooks. It's literally like the shorts have a hook, which is their thumbnail, and then you get sucked in, and then you're stuck in this cycle where you're like scrolling the whole time. And people kind of joke about that being gambling and all that, but I think it really fragments our belief systems. And the reason is like, when I'm walking in reality, I basically build associations from things that are associated. Like, I'll think of leaves, and then I'll think of branches, and then I'll think of trees, and then I'll think of birds, and then, like, I'm experiencing reality, but also building my understanding from things that are related to one another. But when you're scrolling through this gambling machine, the knowledge is so, like, suddenly you're like on a ship. Suddenly you're watching a child. Suddenly you're, suddenly you're, I don't know, watching someone dance. It's so all over the place, and I just wonder how that builds up a neural network in your brain. Do you guys wonder about that? I think it will scramble my brain, and I do feel very drained after that, after getting caught in that loop. I also feel kind of confused, and it's harder to recall my knowledge. So it feels poisonous to my thought processes. It feels poisonous also to my feeling processes, because it is simulating different emotions constantly. I know this is kind of ironic because I'm posting this on YouTube, but I think there is something quite cathartic about digital journaling in this way, where I can just speak uninterrupted. I think it's another irony that everyone spends all their time listening to videos constantly throughout the day, but everyone is also so terrible at listening. You would think that it would translate, like people would suddenly become more captivated by a speaker, but they don't want to listen. They want to be programmed, you know? And listening, it actually takes a lot more effort and energy than we think. It isn't just a one-way it's not just a one-way output. There's a feedback. When you're listening, your facial expressions, your body language, even your tone of voice, or the questions that you ask to extract things from other people or give them a stage to share, that kind of stuff is completely negated when you're just having a video speak at you. Just speaking at you the whole time. And I kind of want to get away from that as well, from the internet, because I think it will disrupt my ability to ingest information and care about things in my friends' lives, my family's lives. Because if it's not stoking a giant fear response of the end of the world, then is it really worth listening to? Another problem is just the sheer quantity of information. I know I spoke on the relevance of the, information in my life, but also just the amount that I ingest. you know, when you're watching like 4 hours of YouTube a day, and that's not even a lot, but which is quite shocking to say, but I think that's not even a lot. When you consume that much, how is your brain actually able to hold on to any of it? And what is it supposed to see as useful and not useful? When you have experiences in life, you have your emotional system that um, helps you to understand what is worth remembering, but you also have, your sleep to digest that information and integrate it into your belief system. But what happens when there's just too much of it? Like, what is that doing to our memories? I don't think our memories are infinite. Are we then just sort of neglecting our life experience from being important because the sheer quantity? I think so. I think so. It also just makes the whole like perception based society thing a little bit too dystopian for me. You know, you're seeing such a different reality on the phone because everything is staged compared to real life where you do just see, normal people, or not even normal, like very sick people, very stressed people, very imperfect people. And on the internet, like, the more you are seen as um like perfect, the more you are lifted up. And I think that that really makes us quite judgmental in general, because when we see real life, then we're like, why aren't you perfect? Our expectations are being shattered by basically like propagandering ourselves into a false reality. And that to me is also quite disturbing. It's also fake. I don't really see difference to like a lot of YouTube and like fiction, because people are reading scripts to you. They have kind of planned what they're gonna say. They've set up their backgrounds to be visually stimulating. Like, this is just my room. This is just my room. But you don't really see a lot of that, and that isn't really what's popular. Um, so yeah, it feels just it just feels poisonous to my soul, the internet. So we'll see how it goes, the void. But I guess in the past, what I found challenging is the feeling of disconnection, because when you stop the internet, you do realize that you are just mostly alone in your room, and that houses are kind of like a prison and you can't leave the house without having money. Everyone lives so far away to you, and like, just living is stressful. Being alive is stressful. Um, because that's the way we've made it. That's the way. It doesn't have, I don't think it has to be that way. Sure, you're still gonna have like challenges in life, like you can't have the ups without the downs, but the individualism of our society makes you so isolated, and there's no way really for me to go to meet my friends. And even the way that there's no cooperation inside society means that everybody has no time. Because when, for instance, like, if you're gonna make a pancake, if you make it by yourself, it's gonna take like what, it's like 50 minutes. Maybe I suck at making pancakes, I don't even eat wheat. But if you're with a friend, it might still take 30 minutes, but like you have a space in between because you're sharing the load of work. You know, someone's doing the batter, someone's reading, someone's, making sure the oven and the pan is prepped. And like cooperation has a way of enriching our lives through the expansion of singular moments. And because everything is so individualistic in our society, I feel that everyone is drowning in time or drowning in the lack of time. Like they have to do everything alone, and so there's none of those breaks. When you're doing it with your friends, there's so much extra time that you can like have a chat, have a laugh. But if you're doing it all alone, you have to focus, and it's all your energy being poured into the one task. And our society is like that on like a huge scale, where everyone is constantly busy because no one is helping each other. And those kind of issues just become so prominent when you quit the internet, because you do just feel overwhelmed and alone. You do just have to look at the state of things and see the ugliness and, you know, feel sad. Feel sad about it. Instead of looking away at some kind of planned fantasy. You also realize, at least I have, that everyone is just talking about the fantasy world, about the internet, and no one is opening up about their lives, because I think everyone is struggling, and it's so much easier to talk about, you know, these things that are kind of abstract, but also, um, it's like the only widely accessible shared experience is opinion based media. Like we just talk about opinions the whole time, and when you stop absorbing those opinions, you do feel even more isolated, because when you do actually see your friends and your family, they're just talking about that. So yeah. I'm reading a book called The Attention Merchants, which is pretty much about, it's about how the attention economy was started. And it's quite disturbing to see that there actually isn't, even news makes money off of attention. You know, it should be called bad news, not news, because it's always bad, because it stokes that fear response that, you know, kind of hijacks attention. But I'll see how it goes with the book, and I'll see how it goes with quitting. I'll see if I can handle the silence, the stillness, and the increased awareness of the problems. But I hope you do well today, Void, and take care of yourself. And try not to doom scroll, because I'm pretty sure that is scrambling your brain. Bye.